back. I hope that you had a wonderful time networking and net weaving. Before we start with session number 2, I am excited to announce our first social media contest prize winner, Danette O'Neill. Congratulations. You are the winner of a $50 gift card. Your prize will be sent to you electronically. Thank you so much for engaging on social media. Remember to use the hashtag EE Women of Color and tag WEOP Inc. in your post. All right, moving on now to the next session. We'll focus on progress, moving forward in 2021 and beyond. A lens on the small business administration and community organizations that promote access to capital, technical assistance, and networks that educate women in business. This session will be moderated by Rachel Shanklin. She manages small business majorities outreach, education, and policy efforts in the state of Georgia. Good morning to you, Rachel.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning,
everyone.
And joining Rachel is Veronica Pugin. Ms. Pugin is the Senior Advisor to the Small Business Administration's Office of Capital Access. Good morning, Ms. Pugin.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. And joining Rachel and Veronica is Terri Denison, the Georgia District Director of the U.S. Small Business Administration. Good morning to you, Terri.
Good morning.
I'll now pass the virtual mic to you, Rachel. Take it away.
Thanks, Lindsay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's great to be with you all today. As Lindsay mentioned, I am Rachel Shanklin, Georgia Outreach Manager for Small Business Majority. We are a national small business organization committed to building a thriving and inclusive economy, specifically focusing on women's entrepreneurship. I'm excited to be with you here today and learn alongside each of you. I really enjoyed the first session, and I'm excited to learn more throughout the day. And as we continue to hear from this wonderful group of women, welcome, Veronica and Terri. It's so great to see you both again. Welcome to both of you. Just to dive right in, I am going to start with a few questions around access to capital, and then we'll dive into a few questions around what programs the SBA offers to women entrepreneurs. So first question for you both, what are some of the unique challenges facing women of color entrepreneurs, and how can the SBA help? We can start with Veronica.
Sure, I can speak to the area of capital access, and I know my colleague Terri would have a lot to share, kind of big picture beyond just that area. But from the Office of Capital Access, something that we see that women entrepreneurs, particularly women of color entrepreneurs, experience is gaps in their access to capital. And so in terms of an entrepreneur being able to take their idea or start a business, capital is critical for them to invest in inventory, in equipment, in hiring employees, and or a business that already exists is seeking to grow needs capital to invest in any inputs to take that business to the next level. And so if women entrepreneurs don't have access to capital, they're squashed out from being able to invest and grow their business or start their business. And some of the reasons we see this challenge with access to capital is for a variety of reasons. A lot of times the way financial institutions deliver capital sets certain requirements that historically marginalized groups leads them being cut out. And so there are a variety of lending practices that we see in the lending community that at times historically don't meet the realities of women entrepreneurs, particularly women of color entrepreneurs. And so those are some of the challenges related specifically to access of capital.
Yeah. And I would add that because of the inequities, in our society along gender as well as along racial and ethnicity lines, there's disparity in terms of maybe lower asset accumulation, income levels, things that are measures or help you to leverage access to, say, capital.
Right. No, definitely. Terri, you mentioned disparities. I have a question here. So more than 1 year after the start of the pandemic, 73% of women entrepreneurs say that they have not restored their headcount compared to 55% of men. Do you think that a lack of strong safety net programs contribute to the challenges that women face in retaining and recruiting their workforce?
I don't know, and I thought about that question. I don't know if it's quite the safety net issue, but definitely I think because women entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses probably, I would suspect, tend to want to hire women, and because of some of the issues that women employees face, such as access to childcare, trying to manage the work-life balance, which is already challenging, but definitely in the context of the pandemic became even more challenging. A lot of those female employees were not able to come back to the workforce. So I see that being more of the issue on that question.
Thank you.
If I can add something to kind of piecing together two points that Terri was getting at. One is kind of the employee side. So women-owned businesses hiring more women and some of the realities that Terri was highlighting. And I'd say another point is what Terri was getting at earlier of the asset requirements or the requirements around accessing capital. So for PPP, from the Office of Capital Access, we did an equity analysis. And the majority of respondents don't report race and gender and demographic information for understandable reasons. But for what was reported, female entrepreneurs got about a little more than a third of the amount of loan funds as male entrepreneurs in terms of that capital. And we see similar trends when it comes to race in terms of which groups are gaining access or not. And so during 1 year from the pandemic, to your question, Rachel, a key tool to stay in business and to keep the employees was and has been access to capital. And so if we see that cycle of women entrepreneurs and the intersection with race, women of color, not having that access to that resource at an equitable rate, that has trickle-down impacts to the employees of the businesses.
Yeah, thank you both. Continuing on this conversation of access to capital, research shows that 52% of women business owners have access to bank credit and often get offered smaller loans and pay higher interest rates compared to men. What are your thoughts on ways that women entrepreneurs can bolster their financial wellness and increase access to programs and education?
I'll make an initial response to that question. I think that's where the SBA programs can be particularly helpful. Like, for example, with our loan guarantee products, that reduces risk to the lender, whether it's actual or perceived increased risk dealing with this group of entrepreneurs. And so the likelihood of getting a yes versus a no on a request. It also allowed the lender to feel more comfortable maybe extending longer terms, which means that you have smaller equal payments over the life of a loan, and maybe even in some cases require less equity injection on the part of the borrower. So that those qualities in our programs can help be used to leverage access to capital that maybe conventionally women of color entrepreneurs would not be able to.
Sure. Yes, and I can build on that. I think a couple points on what Terry's getting at in terms of risk or perceived risk. There, in terms of the lending practices in the market, they'll focus on credit score, collateral requirements, use of funds, and this just can perpetuate the system of access or lack thereof. And so you have this vicious cycle of a certain group of entrepreneurs don't have access to quote unquote healthy capital. And so they're left with credit cards or high interest rate loans. They take those on because another option wasn't available. That continues to hurt their credit score, continues to burden them with, as Terry's mentioning, these very high monthly payments. And that hurts their score more, hurts their assets more, and then kicks them out from being able to access the healthy credit. And it's this vicious cycle. Same with the collateral requirements, right? So the reason communities that are seeking to rise up from being marginalized from an economic access standpoint, the point is assets are being sought. That's why there isn't, collateral waiting so that's kind of the point. But that's quote unquote riskier. And so I'd say a couple points. I'd echo Terry's point on the SBA playing that role of trying to fill that gap in the market and address those needs. There are SBA loan programs. Terry mentioned the guarantees that the SBA provides. There's a microloan program for smaller dollar loans via microlenders. During COVID, during this pandemic, the SBA's capital programs have been PPP, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, COVID EIDL, the program that's still remaining, offering loans of 3.75% interest over a 30-year time horizon. And to Terry's point, that means that the monthly payments are much lower than a market alternative. And so seeking those programs that the SBA offers, number one. Number two, I would say eyeing as an entrepreneur ways to not get caught into that vicious cycle. And so those high interest loan programs that at times are marketed in a way that don't make it clear to the entrepreneur what they're about to enter. So I'd say really getting advising and support to understand any debt that's taken on, any loan that's taken on. A loan can be a very useful tool for a small business, but as long as it doesn't trap the small business owner. So I would say before taking on any debt that's not with the SBA, really understanding the terms and the implications and the interest rates and how that works, and understanding how that impacts a credit score, just as a way to kind of not become trapped under those terms.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to just make a quick plug for our counseling and education resources, such as SCORE, our volunteer partner organization, small business development centers, women business centers, because what they can do is help prepare those entrepreneurs for approaching a commercial lender. Can educate them about the process and how it works, what lenders are looking for, helping them put together business plan, business financial projections, et cetera, which a lot of times is a challenge with that for a business that is looking to submit an application for a business loan.
Yeah, that's definitely an issue that we hear with small businesses in our network, specifically around predatory lending and finding different loan products that they think will work for them. But at the end of the day, the APR is very high. The loan terms just aren't as equitable as other options out there could be. You kind of touched on this, but I'm hoping that you both can elaborate just a bit more. Many women small business owners rely, as you said, Veronica, on their own savings, personal credit, personal networks for capital, and are actually unaware that the SBA has lines of credit with great rates. Can you speak to that?
Yes, or I can give some detail on Terri if you want to add on to that. So the SBA, so as Terry's mentioned, the SBA has programs where the SBA serves this role to guarantee a loan to address kind of the risk level that a lender would perceive. So that's one of the hallmark programs of the SBA, and so that's with the 7A program. So if anyone's into, I'll list some of them, but if anyone's interested, they can go to sba.gov, and there's a loans category. Another program is the microloan program. That's up to $50,000. The interest rate there is generally 8 to 13%, and that's via microlender institutions that have focus on the smaller dollar loans. So smaller dollar loans, 50,000 below, tend to not be serviced by traditional banking institutions. And we find a lot of times women entrepreneurs or women of color could use those smaller dollar loans just to get things moving with their business. Another program that's available today is the COVID EIDL program, as I mentioned. It is a COVID disaster relief program, and that's 3.75% interest over a 30-year time horizon with a 2-year deferment. To access that program ends December 31st, 2021. So I highlight that program so that if anyone could benefit from that, they apply as soon as possible. So those are some examples. I don't know if Terri, you have other points to add there.
No, I think you've covered all of them. For because I'm thinking big for women entrepreneur, including women of color. Construction companies. One program we have that we rarely talk about is the Surety Bond Guarantee Program. So it's similar to the loan program, except we're guaranteeing a surety bond, which of course, if you're a construction company, you need to have to submit bids, a surety bond. And then if you're successful, you got to have a payment and performance bond. And that's a lot of time is hard for a small construction company to obtain, especially women-owned construction companies. So we do provide that as a way for you to grow your capacity in that industry.
Thank you both. That was very, very helpful. We're now going to go into some SBA-specific program questions. Can you discuss any benefits of being a certified women-owned business, such as being certified in women-owned small business and women business enterprise to help grow your small business? And speak on the advantages of being a WOSB.
Okay, I can address that. Of course, with the Women-Owned Small Business Certification Program, it's geared primarily to help women entrepreneurs access the federal procurement arena. And the way the program is structured, it can be used, a contracting officer can use it to provide opportunity for women-owned small businesses in those industries where women-owned businesses have historically been underrepresented. So that, to me, is one of the more powerful features of the federal WSB certification. The WBE similarly is a tool to leverage accessing opportunities in the corporate spend space. And for the corporate buyer, the certification is a way or a tool that they can leverage on their end to diversify their vendor base by including businesses that have been specifically identified and certified as being owned and controlled by women businesses.
So let's say that I'm a WBE certified and I want to bid for a contract with a corporation. What steps would I need to take?
Well, with the WBE, normally you have WeBank, the national organization. The affiliate here in Georgia is the Greater Women's Business Council that will facilitate the initial certification process, and as well as to continue to review and renew that certification on an annual basis.
Okay, thank you. And Veronica, I just want to make sure you didn't have anything to contribute. If not, we can move on.
Terry's got it covered.
Awesome. So next question, could one of you share, or both, information about the Women's Business Centers of SBA and the Ascent platform, specifically SBA's commitment to entrepreneurship for women of color?
Would you like to take that one first?
I think, Terri, you'll probably do a better job since I focus more on the capital access programs exclusively.
Okay. Well, of course, the Women Business Center program started, back in the 90s, interestingly, because women entrepreneurs time and time again shared with us that the resources we had at that time, a lot of times did not get their particular challenges, or they didn't feel particularly comfortable going to a organization maybe that was all male consultants at that time. Thankfully, I think we see more diversity across all of our resource partner organizations, but that program still exists. We have one here in Georgia that's hosted by the Access to Capital for Entrepreneurs, or ACE, and they provide free one-on-one counseling, and as well as they provide training on how to start a business, and also to include how do you grow that business and continue to meet the challenges of that business. So a very important resource that you do not have to pay for there. And then Ascent is a platform that we launched at the beginning of 2021 that is a dimensional multimedia type platform geared towards women-owned businesses that are looking to scale. A lot of times we spend so much time focused on let's get them started. Their needs continue and they change and evolve as that business continues to grow. So a lot of content and different ways in which that content is delivered to address those specific needs, and also to try to connect women-owned businesses with each other so that they can kind of counsel each other and coach each other.
I'll just add a detail to that point that Terri just raised of connecting women and business to each other. One challenge can be when you have these systemic forces is that certain groups get access to information earlier or more than others. Mm-hmm. And so the example we're talking about earlier about predatory lending or how to not get trapped in these loans, for some people, they have that information, and for some groups, they don't have that information. They don't have that kind of flag telling them beware of this. And it's whole groups that do and don't have that information. And so to Terri's point, the more that not just women entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs of color can access these resources for their business, but then be building together and sharing that information together, that's also a really valuable step forward.
Yes. Cultivating that small business ecosystem, especially among women entrepreneurs, is key to growing and scaling your business, I would say. Next question is about the Community Advantage Loan Program, which helps to increase capital for women entrepreneurs in under-resourced areas. Has the program been successful in expanding equitable access to funding? Or could you speak to how it has helped increase access to capital for entrepreneurs in under-resourced areas?
Terri, I don't know if you want to start. I can
okay, well, I'll start. One of the things I think has been very important with that product is that it really covered a gap in the continuum of capital access need that wasn't being addressed. $50,000 and under loans, your micro lenders address that. Then you get to around the 250, 300 mark. Then that's when the SBA, say 7A program or SBA Express program kicks in. So we kind of had that in between space. And the way the Community Advantage program is structured, loans up to 250,000 is the target for that particular product. And it combines really two strengths. One, the guarantee ability of the SBA to help reduce risk. And then the participants or the lenders in this program are community oriented lenders, such as micro lenders, such as community development financial institutions, et cetera, that have, they're often, of course, nonprofits. So they have a little different way of looking at risk and creditworthiness and the value of a particular project.
Thank you, Terri. Veronica, you may be able to speak to this one, and Terri as well. Could you both share a little more information about the changes to the COVID EIDL program? So far, how have those changes opened the door for more businesses to get greater and more equitable support from the $150 billion in loanable funds that are still available?
Sure. So the code, just for those who have different levels of familiarity with the program, the COVID EIDL program is a COVID small business relief program. It's the remaining program of the federal response to the COVID-19 pandemic in terms of small business resources. And the benchmark of the program is a loan. It's a borrower-friendly loan with interest rates of 3.75%. As I mentioned before, a 30-year repayment period and a 2-year deferment. So kind of what Terri was highlighting before, different terms will lead to different monthly kind of payment burdens. And this program leads to a much lower repayment burden than market alternatives. At 3.75% interest in a 30-year time horizon, someone who gets a $10,000 loan, COVID EIDL loan, is looking at a repayment of less than $50 a month. And so that's the program. It is focused on, since it's a disaster relief program, it's focused on businesses that were in business by January 2020. So I just highlight this because I know this is an entrepreneurial forum. And so there are small businesses who are looking to start or are new. And so I just don't want to waste anyone's time. That the program is requirement is that you're in business by January 2020. The changes, there were a series of 2 groups of changes. There were processing changes and policy changes enacted over the summer and early fall. The policy changes was the cap was in the kind of key policy changes was the cap was increased to $2 million. The deferment period was extended to 2 years for all loans. And you can use the proceeds to prepay commercial debt and pay federal debt. And so kind of getting back to before when we're talking about higher interest debt, less friendly term debt, and how that can really trap an entrepreneur, the COVID EIDL program allows you via these changes to take COVID EIDL loan funds and pay off higher interest commercial debt. This is not refinancing, so I know that can be confusing at times, but you can, if you as a small business have a higher interest, less borrower-friendly loan that is commercial for your business, you can take COVID EIDL funds and pay it off, and then you're just left with the COVID EIDL loan. You can also use COVID EIDL loan funds to make payments on federal debt for your business. You can't pay off the federal debt, but you can make payments. So those are some of the changes. Just answering your question, Rachel, of how this promote more equitable support. So a few points. One, getting back to what we talked about earlier, the burdensome debt and the debt trap impacts more historically marginalized communities, right? That is more of a reality. So by allowing this program to be used to try to free oneself from that, that is addressing that, number one. Number two, some of the processing changes we enacted. So the program was had unprecedented demand, and the agency had never witnessed this type of demand for a program. And so there were processing delays. There was a backlog over the summer. And so the agency invested additional personnel, processing capacity, management capabilities to increase our ability to process the applications. We went from being able to do less than 2,000 loan increase applications a day to over 37,000. And how that relates to kind of equitable support is that, unfortunately, the more complexity, the more challenges there are in a process, the more those who already were vulnerable in the process benefit are the ones to first impact those. And so by making a smoother process, making the application more accessible, we are kind of opening the door to make sure that those who already were struggling to get into the door aren't getting kicked out.
Thank you, Veronica. We are coming up. We have about 2 minutes left. If you both could just give one thing on the top of your mind that you suggest women entrepreneurs of color could do to help them start a business.
Well, I'll take that one first. I think of course, having been in this position for quite some time and seeing various types of entrepreneurs, the one thing I would recommend is that really make sure that your business is built around a market-driven force or need. A lot of times people start businesses based on their personal interests or because of their personal circumstances. And that's not to say that can't be part of the equation, but it can't be the initiating and driving force. There has to be a problem you're trying to solve or a pain you're trying to address in the marketplace with that business idea.
Thanks, Terri.
And building off Terri's point, I would say one piece is to invest in understanding the financial management of your business. I've talked to many entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs of color, who unfortunately have been impacted by society saying things like women can't do math and finances, people of color, women of color aren't going to be as good at the numbers. And that is not true. For anyone who has that question, there are so many women of color who are extraordinary in their financial management, the numbers, they've got it. It's really just something to invest in and access the resources that Terri mentioned. And I just want to emphasize that is not true. Anyone can access these numbers. You don't have to be a math superstar or financial superstar. And the messages that have been shared that question if someone can access that, those are just not those are not true. And there's support. You're not alone in this. And there are resources to understand that financial management that will set you up for success.
Well, thank you both for sharing your expertise and just making this all digestible. I know it was a lot of information, but we appreciate you coming on today and sharing all of this information and expertise with us. Looking forward to continued collaboration, and thank you so much for having us, WeOp.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's give a virtual round of applause to Rachel for moderating and to Veronica and Terri for that wealth of information. Just so you know, there are organizations comprised of industry professionals providing you with free business resources, training, and technical support. The SBA offers training, coaching, loans, business certifications, and special program initiatives targeted for small businesses. Go to sba.gov for your business resources and locate the office within your area. Small Business Majority is another great resource, and the SBA are both listed in WeOp's resource book. So don't forget to visit the WeOp Expo booth, download a copy of the resource book. It is time now to give away another prize. You are engaging on social media using the hashtag EE Women of Color, tagging WeOp Inc. Our next winner, the winner of a $50 gift card, is, drumroll, KD Realtor or K Dildy on Instagram. Congratulations, you are the winner of a $50 gift card. Please send your email address and mailing address. Just drop that in the chat or send it to WeOp via a private message so that we can get your prize over to you. Again, thank you so much for engaging on social media. It's time now for another networking mission, networking or net weaving mission. We're going to meet again in the session room for another session. In the session room for another, let's say, meeting. You could take a quick break and join us again in 15 minutes. Thanks so much.